Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Colony Pit, where we catch up with our colony friends and alumni. We have a great guest on today's show, Rex, who's on the hot seat for us today.
Today, John, we continue with part two with Anthony Tony Martinez, and we pick up where we left off. And just as a reminder, before we start getting into things, punch that subscribe button for us. That helps us out a lot with the show. But we're going to pick up where we left off. Tony, thanks for coming back on. We appreciate that. And when we left off last time, you had told us about your high school career and how you made the decision to transition into the military, Army Rangers specifically. So, why don't we pick up right there and talk to us about your experience with the Rangers?
Yeah. So it's August. Bags are packed. Head down to Fort Benning. Go to boot camp at the Infantry Training Brigade, place known as Sand Hill. And it's August. It's 95 degrees, almost 100% humidity. Get a quick wake up call how different this place is from Albany, New York, and so just started doing what I was doing in Colonie, trying to meet friends, just trying to find people like, hey, already going into that mindset from like playing organized sports, like, hey, find someone that's like-minded like you that wants to get better at lacrosse, track, football, and just pull each other through. And so um, I think that's one thing, like pulling away from colony, like with the organized sports and going into the military is no different. And so made friends real quick. And buddy Greg Lawrence from Worcester, Massachusetts, we became friends in basic training. And we go 13 weeks. We get done with infantry training. And then we head down to airborne school, which is still on Fort Benning. Airborne school is a 3 week school that teaches basic parachuting. Um, then we graduate from airborne school, and there was ranger instructors that came down. They had their black beret, and everyone knew as soon as we got done with graduation, um, on Fort Benning, like when you see these guys in black berets, you're like, that's the 75th Ranger Regiment, and there's already just that presence of them. And so I was like, here we go. Like you know, this is what we signed up for. And so they said, everyone here who's getting ready to go to RIP. And so for anyone that doesn't know what RIP is, it's the Ranger Indoctrination Program. I guess nowadays they changed the name to RASP, Ranger Assessment Selection Program, I believe. But at the time when I went in, it was known as RIP, and they always say like rest in peace. When you go there, they're gonna kill you and everything. And so we graduate airborne school. They asked everyone here who has a ranger contract. We all raised our hands. They said, okay, pull out of the formation and come over here and make a new formation, and you just line up. And so we lined up, and they put us in the back of a stake bed truck, and we get in the back of this truck, and they take us up to the 75th Ranger Regiment, the headquarters. And we get out there, and um, it just looked like a completely different place. I mean, the compound itself, the aura that was around it. For anyone that's ever seen Saving Private Ryan, Black Hawk Down, that's all based off of the Rangers. And when you walked inside the compound, like you could feel it. You could feel the history, the tradition, the brotherhood, the camaraderie. You sat there and you knew you were amongst like just war fighters, people that walked around. And on your right shoulder, if you had the scroll from the particular battalion that you're in, if it was on your right shoulder, it meant that you were in combat. If it's on your left shoulder, it just means this is where you're currently stationed at, whether it's Fort Bragg, Fort Campbell, um, and uh, so walking around, you see these guys with combat scrolls, and you're like, oh my God, that guy's been in Grenada, or that guy was in Somalia. And you just saw, before you even started the program, you just saw the amount of respect that other people within the regiment gave those people that were in Somalia, were in Grenada, and it just made you try hard. Like it just, the bar was already raised, and you already knew when it was time to do push-ups, you were gonna do as many as you possibly could, because the people that were standing over you, you were like, oh, these guys were, in Black Hawk Down. Um, and I imagine it's the same thing like in the SEALs and Force Recon and in the PJs. When you're in those selection environments, you're amongst the best instructors, and you just want to perform. And so that 3 weeks was by far the absolute hardest thing I ever did in my life. I thought it was harder than Ranger School because that RIP program is run by people from the Ranger Regiment, where Ranger School is just a school that anyone can go to, and it's not run by the Ranger Regiment. It's kind of confusing the way the military does it. They do Ranger School as a leadership course, and let's say if there's somebody that's stationed in Alaska and they want to go to Ranger School, they can go to Ranger School for, at that time, it was 63 days, and then they just go back to Fort Richardson, Alaska. But if you want to be stationed in the Ranger Regiment, you got to go through the Ranger Indoctrination Program and then pick which Ranger Battalion you want to go to, and then, you live the life in the Ranger Battalion. And so after after the Ranger Indoctrination Program, um, they give you your pick of like your dream sheet of which battalion you want to go to. And since I was already used to Fort Benning, I said, hey, I want to stay here at 3rd Ranger Battalion. Some of my classmates went to Fort Lewis, 2nd Ranger Battalion in Tacoma, Washington. And then some of my other classmates went to 1st Ranger Battalion in Savannah, Georgia at Hunter Army Airfield. And so yeah, so after graduating RIP, started the career off at 3rd Ranger Battalion in Fort Benning, Georgia, and then yeah, then you get exposed to the whole lifestyle of what your job is now going to be for the next 4 years.
And like in the nutshell, what
Mm.
type of training did you do? In the Ranger Battalion. So like, what would you, what are the Army Rangers good at? So what would it be like a typical mission for an Army Ranger to have?
Yeah, so um, if anyone ever looks up, and I know there's Netflix series, there's documentaries of Operation Just Cause in December of 1989 in Panama. It was an airfield seizure, and actually got to go down to Panama for the Jungle Operations Training Center and actually see the airfield that the Rangers seized that day, which was, yeah, definitely an experience I'll never forget. Primarily airfield seizures, and what an airfield seizure is, and that's the reason why you have to be airborne qualified. Rangers will, um, they'll, after intelligence and reconnaissance is gathered on the airfield, they'll go in, they'll parachute in, and between the main runway and the taxiway, using dirt bikes, other Air Force personnel, they'll go in, clear the airfield of the obstacles, whether it's piles of sand, railroad ties, vehicles, 18 wheelers, um, and they'll go in and remove all those obstacles, kill all the enemies, and then make a make it a safe runway for the 82nd Airborne Division, the 10th Mountain Group, all these other units within the military to come land in, and now we can start doing future operations, within that country, that region, that area. So airfield seizures is the bread and butter, um, and also doing raids and ambushes back then. Now Terrorism is a huge thing, so I'm sure their mission has changed. But at that time, when it was to get boots on the ground, parachuting and airfield seizures was the bread and butter.
So you do that for 4 years,
Mhm.
from '96 to 2000, and
Yeah.
then what happened?
Um, so by around 2000, we're out in the doing an exercise out in the field, and I'm saying I'm about to be 22 years old, and all my friends were in college, having fun, keeping in touch with them, and hearing about life back home. And I was like, I want to get out, use my GI Bill, college fund. I gave him 4 years. I want to go get a different experience. This has been fun. This has been cool. Got a chance to go to a lot of courses, a lot of training, a lot of advanced medical training, um, all the things from different shooting courses, ground fighting, getting trained by the Gracie brothers in jujitsu, um, meeting some unbelievable people. But I was still kind of like, it's kind of weird. I was still immature in a sense where like I want to get out of here and just go do something else, but mature enough to know like, hey, when I get out of here and go do something, I'm gonna do it up. I'm gonna either be all in or all out. And if that means going to school, I'm gonna give it, the same amount of effort that I gave when I got into the Ranger indoctrination program. Um, so I get out December 2000, and I'm like, you know what? I still got the itch. I'm 22 years old, and I still want to play football. And so didn't have any grades, any current transcripts. So I said, well, it looks like I'm going to Hudson Valley because, you just fill out the application and so then back up to Troy, New York, it was. And so it was January 2001. I enrolled at Hudson Valley Community College.
And when you're at Hudson Valley, what was going to school back like again? Because you've been 4 years out of school, now you
Mhm.
have to go back to school. What was that like? And then what position did you go try out for on the football team?
So at that time, the head coach was Bob Jojo, and I still had a VHS tape of like from Colonie football. So I go knock on his office, and it was completely different. I'm sitting there in jeans, like nice jeans, a tucked in button down shirt, a jacket. And I was like, hey, Coach Jojo, my name is Anthony Martinez. I just got out of the military and I like to come try out for football. Um, can you kind of point me in the direction like what I need to do? And he was cool. I mean, he was, I don't know how a lot of people's experience were with him, but he really took the time with me and helped develop me more as a football player. And and he's like, yeah, this is the process, and be here at this date and time, and you're gonna run the 40-yard dash and do the bench press and the vertical jump and all that stuff, and just make sure you're in shape and everything. And so I was like, okay. Um, and so school at that time, 2001, January 2001, compared to June 1996, night and day. I was like, I'm not missing class. I'm gonna get A's in every class. And so my first semester got a 4.0, second semester like a 3.9 something, and I was pissed. And so that's the one thing where I'll never have a regret about the military, and something like if I can pass on to anyone that was like me coming out that was confused, didn't have direction, you'll get direction real quick. Where um, the the military will take you serious. If you want to get better at push-ups, if you want to become a sergeant, if you want to go into the Delta Force, if you want to go do the elite of the elite, there's someone there that will take the time out and show you how to do it. And and so I had the same expectation when I got to Hudson Valley. I was like, there should be somebody here that hey, I'm a new student. You know, um, what's the pipeline for this? And quick, to realize like, hey, things in the military are completely different than,
Yeah.
things out in the real world. So, but it was awesome. I met some awesome teachers there. Um, I love the 12 to 1, 20 to 1 um, teacher to student ratio. I guess you could say I was a nerd at that time. I was always raising my hand, asking questions, and it was awesome time.
How, Tony, you mentioned
Mm,
push-ups. Tell us a
mm,
little bit though about the difference in your physical abilities from the time you graduated high school
mm.
to the time you stepped on the Hudson Valley and started playing football in terms of your size and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So when I graduated high school, I was, and I'll never forget because when I enlisted in the military, they have to take down your height and your weight, and you go through the whole medical screening process. So I was 6'3", 170 pounds, and after airborne school, going into RIP, I remember I got up to like 190, 195, and I was like, oh, I'm starting to gain weight. Like I'm starting to eat more, and it was like basic training, like stimulated this appetite, and I remember my first PT test in basic training, and I failed it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna get kicked out of here. I'm gonna go back up to Albany because I can't do push-ups and everything. So I remember you had to do 42 push-ups, 52 sit-ups, and run the 2 mile in 16:54 or less. And I ended up doing 39 push-ups, 64 sit-ups, and I ran a 10:54 in the 2 mile. So the running wasn't a problem. The upper body strength was pitiful. I mean, it was like I had like tweezers for arms. Like I just no upper body strength. And so so I get into airborne school or towards the end of basic training, and my push-ups go from 39 to 54 to 68, and we just kept doing decks of cards, like as a group, like if it's a picture card, you do 10 push-ups, whatever other number, you do that, and then we just kept doing decks of cards. And so I get out of the military. I'm probably about at 22, maybe 230, 235 around there. So
So you did a lot of push-ups.
did a lot of
You
push-ups
gained you gained
and
60 pounds in
and
about 5 years. That's a lot of
yeah.
push-ups, I would say.
And my team leaders, they were all into, weightlifting, and the whole ranger
Yeah.
environment it's an alpha male environment, like anywhere else. And everyone's always in the gym. Our sergeant major was always like, whenever you got an award, like he would shake your hand and he would grab your shoulder and he's like, hey, he's like, looking good, soldier. Like, you hitting the
Yeah.
gym tonight, and it was just that kind of environment. And
Cool.
so
Good. So take us through Hudson Valley. It sounds like school. You kind of turned around your attitude on school a little bit from high school. You're focused. You're doing well in school. Tell us about. But you haven't played football in like roughly five years, basically, which is
yeah,
that's a long time.
yeah,
Not that you forget, but that's a good amount of time to have a gap. Talk to
yeah.
us about the football experience at Hudson Valley, and then I'll let John take us into what happened after Hudson Valley.
Yeah, um, so like you said, that hiatus from football, and um, after working out at the fitness factory, and not a lot of social media, not a lot of how do you get faster, how do you jump higher. Um, so probably after the first year of Hudson Valley, at the end of training camp, after doing enough two-a-day sessions, I was like, okay, hey, I remember, how to catch a football now, how to run routes and everything. But it really took the whole first year, excuse me, to get back into the swing of things. And then by the second year, um, it really started clicking, and then started getting some looks. Colleges started coming up to Hudson Valley, sending their coaches, their recruiting coaches that were for that region. And but the funny thing about college at that time was I was really interested like in medicine, like physical therapy, orthopedic and everything. And there was a part of me that was like, hey, you know what? If football doesn't work out, like I'm so into studying now. And it was the craziest thing where like, taking these sports med classes where I was I was so much more into school. Even though I was into football, it was definitely like a cool experience because I took school that serious where I'm like I'm not going to be late for class, like 100% attendance, like going to be sitting, in the front row. The same things that were taught in the military, like be in the front, ask questions, take notes. And I just did that in college and it worked. And but after the second year of football, um, yeah, started realizing like, hey, I can get a scholarship out of this. Like there's programs that are coming in. Um, and talking to Coach Jojo and I and trying to find the best fit. And um, that's where some disappointment came in because before going to Temple, the place that I initially gave a verbal commitment to was the University of North Carolina, and John Bunting was the head coach there, and they had already had Algie Crumpler, who was a tight end that played for the Falcons, and Zach Hilton. He went off to play in the NFL. So North Carolina was a very tight end oriented offense, and I'm like, this is the best fit. I started seeing their plays, their routes, and everything. I'm like, yep, we run the same routes and everything. So looking at it was going to be a smooth transition. The problem was the ACC conference is such a academically um, well known, or the ACC is really well known for their academics. And so when North Carolina came out of Hudson Valley, you had out of 60 credits, 48 of them had to be transferable. I had 46.
Ooh.
And so now I'm starting to like, okay, now I'm starting to get nervous. And I remember the president of Hudson Valley at that time. I saw him at the Lois and John Atwater award presentation, and it was like uh, if you wrote a paper on a time when you displayed, leadership experience, you got $1,000 cash award. So I was such a nerd. I was looking up for any way to get additional money. So I was writing essays, and so I met the president there, and he goes, "Hey," he goes, if you need any help, when it comes time to get into a university, I have open door policy. By all means, come in." And so I believe it was like around December. We were on the phone. It was the NCAA compliance with North Carolina, Hudson Valley. Willie Hammett was the vice president of Hudson Valley. Um, our athletic director there, and they were trying to figure out like North Carolina was like, hey, we want to offer Anthony, a 2-year scholarship, and but he's showing 46 transferable credits. Is there any like winter blitz classes he can do right now? And they're like, oh, sorry, we can't call these professors because they're on Christmas leave and everything. And they're like, we understand, but this is potentially at that time they said, this is a $64,000 scholarship. We really need to explore all the options here. And that was the only time I was let down by Hudson Valley. Um, was with the vice president because I talked to the vice president and he was saying how when I talked to him, I said, hey, the president said this. Um, can we talk to the president? And the vice president's like, I'm going to take care of this, and we'll you know we'll just address it like that. So I never had a chance to get the president involved, and so at that time, um, North Carolina was like, okay, Anthony, we'll give you a call after this, and we'll go from there. So they hung up, the whole conference call hung up. I left the vice president's office. I had a baby blue hoodie that had, the North Carolina Tar Heels logo. And what I should have done at that time was I should have stayed one more semester, redshirted into North Carolina, focus on becoming more physically developed, worked on my academics. I would have had a semester there, would have figured out the campus, the whole layout, where to go get groceries and everything. That would have been the right thing to do. The immature side was like, no, I want to go play football right now. I want to be at some place for spring ball. And so Temple offered it. And it wasn't a good choice athletically, but academically, no regrets. Had awesome professors there and everything.
So what other schools were looking at you besides North Carolina and Temple?
So Maryland came up, met with their coach, and then went down to Maryland's campus with Coach Friedgen, who was on the Under Armour commercial. Miami's recruiter came up. He coached defensive line. So University of Miami, Maryland, Tulsa offered, Temple, North Carolina, and Iowa State, and New Hampshire, and that was pretty much it. Yeah.
So right now
decent amount.
you got So right now you got some legit schools going, and I think you were telling me too before that Miami was between you and Kevin Everett, and Kevin Everett was at Lackawanna playing the junior college Super Bowl, so they went that way. So yeah,
he was at Kilgore Community College. Yeah.
Yeah. So you went from Colony Central that you didn't even get a look or an offer to now you have some legitimate Division I schools, offering you money. And two, I'd never ever heard of anyone sitting down with the vice president of a college to talk about getting into another school. So obviously you had some clout at Hudson Valley that you were obviously like a scholar athlete there, that you contribute on the field and off the field, because a lot of people don't go out of their way to do these things unless you were someone who had some talent and actually did some good for Hudson Valley. So all that happens, and now you're heading to Temple, and people don't know where that is. That's in Philadelphia. What was, and also question too, I'm always curious, and with our future guest on, I always have to ask, what was the speed like when you're playing high school football to Hudson Valley? Was the game faster, kids bigger, or was it kind of like, what was your take on it?
So from high school, I thought teams like, and this is cool to reminisce, I thought teams like CBA in football, I thought CBA was pretty fast, because I remember Dave Bird, who went to Syracuse and he played DB, going up against him. I thought his speed was fast, and started seeing people with his talent level at Temple. But community college, there was some schools, that were legit, like Lackawanna is a national powerhouse. Who was the other school down in New York City?
Nassau. Was it Nassau?
Nassau. I mean, they had some monsters on their team. They had a lot of guys that were Division I prospects. So I thought certain schools in community college, there was some really good talent. In some places, I mean, SUNY Alfred, SUNY Canton, SUNY Mooresville. Erie. I remember one year Erie Community College. They were pretty good. But the team that I remember the most, that was stacked with the most talent, was Lackawanna. Because they had people that went to the University of Miami and other Division I schools. And so one thing, that you brought up that to take away, something that I was really proud of and kind of like a surreal moment, was going from that kid in high school where not even know where to what to do after high school graduation. And being in Coach JoJo's office I remember seeing this coach. He was on he was on like NFL Century Films, and it was on Sean Taylor, the free safety for Miami, and they interviewed this defensive line coach, and I remember that guy. I was like, I met him in at Hudson Valley in Coach JoJo's office, and I remember he said, he's like, Anthony, I'm going to be honest with you. He's like, whoever has the better year, and whoever performs at the level that we're looking for, it's going to come down to you and Kevin Everett for a scholarship here, at the University of Miami. And it was just like it was such a like surreal moment where I'm like, University of Miami, like, and this guy standing there, he had a leather jacket, he had the U logo, and he had the ibis bird here, and it was just so cool to talk to him. I mean, just to sit there and talk to him, like, was, for me, it was like success right there. It was like, to anyone that's listening, anyone that's watching this, if you don't think you can get to where, you want to get to, some people are going to find the easy path, to get there. For me, it was like, I had to go, take the long way around and just grind through it. But, to sit there and all the people that helped me out along the way, just to sit with this guy and him say, hey, it's going to be between you and Kevin Everett. And Kevin Everett ended up getting drafted, I think, second round or third round, went to play for the Bills, got a neck injury. But he was a guy, I remember when he went to Miami and watching him on TV, being the starting tight end for Miami, I never hated. Like, I was cheering for him, being like, because I love the U, tight end university. And so one thing was I never hated on people, and so I was like, man, I hope that guy does awesome. I remember him from community college, and here he is playing tight end for the U. But not to get off on a tangent, the speed from high school to community college definitely increased a little bit. From community college to Division I, some schools were unbelievably fast, and the speed was fast. Penn State was not. Not to knock on Penn State, they weren't twitchy like some other schools, and it's just they were just
So Tony,
big guys in the Big Ten.
So, Tony, let's do this. We're coming up here on time. Let's get you back for one more episode, and that way we can kind of, finish this off, because I know the story is still catching. But, let's just do that. We'll end it here on this episode, and we'll just hook back up with you next time.
Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you soon.